So what actually happened with us is we actually caught it. I get the phone call from my network administrator saying, "Hey, something weird's going on with this user account." And after 5 minutes of discussion, I said, "Go down and unplug the network. Get off, like just unplug the internet." And we did find that somebody did infiltrate our system.
So welcome to the CMMC Proof Podcast. I'm Darius Phillips, your host, a certified CMMC assessor, and you all are in for a great treat today. We have CIO at DUville University, Joseph Gunnells. How are you, Joseph?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you today? And thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. I know life at a university as a CIO is nonstop action, so I appreciate you taking some time out your day to be with the CMMC Proof audience.
Not a problem at all. I'm honored to be part of the podcast and can't wait to get into some of the discussions.
Fantastic. So Joseph, I was looking throughout your, looking on your LinkedIn, and also I've had the opportunity to work with you. I know you have an extensive IT background, and as I mentioned, you're currently the CIO, Chief Information Officer at DUville University. Can you tell the audience a little more about your background?
Yeah, well, I started out very early in my career. I was never an individual who was into technology. I played sports. I was athletic in school. I really didn't like technology back then. I loved the outdoors. So when I got out of school, high school, I graduated, I was a bricklayer. I went to school, a masonry school, and I began a path bricklaying. Shortly into that career, I found out I had some health issues that prevented me from throwing bricks around, building, heavy objects. So I had some surgeries. I ended up in a place, it was a bad time where, I got out of school with a path, and in such a short time, you find out that path is not going to work for you going forward. And when I got the news that I was going to be in a wheelchair by the time I was 30, and I was 19 at the time, 18, 19 years old, I'm a family person. I always wanted a family. So I had to pivot and pivot quickly. And I didn't have the means to take the traditional path of schooling. So I found myself in a place where I had to make some decisions. I had children early in my life because I wanted that family. I wanted to be able to hold my children. When they get older, I wanted to throw a football to them. So I pivoted really quick. I took a fast-paced course at a technical school. It was a certificate program school. It was business management. I knew I had to do something in an office. So I took a 2-year certificate program that taught me business management and IT back then, floppy disks and
back in the day.
Yes. So obviously things have changed quite a bit. And I think that's what really got me involved in IT. I look for a position where I can grow my strengths. I'm a very hands-on individual. That's how I like to learn. So this type of schooling for me benefited me, not just because of my family, but it's the way I learned. And not having all those means, being young with a family, with children, I really had to make some changes, life and career changes. So long story short, I applied for an office position at the Buffalo Museum of Science here in Buffalo, New York, as pretty much an office clerk. I never knew this was going to happen, but I ended up being the IT person at that company. Mainly, computers were just beginning to be popular at that time in businesses. I was hired. We had some antiquated systems and I'm hands-on. So I did not like the paper and writing with marker board and doing statistics manually like that. So I sat down and I taught myself Microsoft Access, and I developed a program writing access tables to take reservations. So that's really how I got involved in tech. And I really started to love it. And we had a magnet school attached to the museum. And one day I'm playing around and I'm seeing all these little icons in the network. And I accidentally broke into to the elementary school's gaming servers. So I got real excited because I had all these free games, and I'm like, what's going on? So I go over and I tell the IT director over at the school, I'm like, I'm on your servers, and I don't know how I did it. And he goes, oh, it's impossible. So I brought him to my office, and I said, what is this? Is this your server? He goes, yeah, this is a student servers for games. How did you do this? So right there, I was like, oh my gosh, I did something that I wasn't supposed to, and I liked it. So, so long story
The rest
short,
is history.
yeah, the rest is history. I got into a private oxygen company 10 years after. I was at the Science Museum for 10 years. Got into a company that had 5 locations throughout New York State at the time. When I left that company, I was the only IT individual at that company. When I started, I found out that the Sunday prior to my start date, the 2 IT guys that were there had resigned overnight. So I show up at this big $25 million a year company, big to me at the time, and very important, supplying oxygen to the elder and hospitals. And I walked in there and it was Y2K. Computers, Windows 95, all taken apart. Nobody can work. So I walk in there and my first task was, we've got 45 staff members sitting here with no computers. Get us going. So I had to jump in and delve in really quick. And that's pretty much how I took off. I educated myself. I got into management. I started out low. I started out on network admin, and I got really interested in leadership, started building leadership skills. And then the days of cybersecurity hit us. Back in the day, people didn't even really know what cybersecurity was. That wasn't really a big deal at the time. Unlike now, you can't do anything without hearing of some multiple attacks on every sort of company. So here we are back working higher education.
That's a great story, and I'm sure I'm going to tie back in about the bricklaying. That is, I can see some analogies and parallels with IT and cybersecurity. So I'll certainly touch on that later. But we know that just being a CIO at any organization, especially in higher education, can be very stressful, demanding. So before we really get into the meat of the interview, I'd like to know more about what are you passionate about in terms of, like, how do you unwind? What are something that you do outside of IT?
Oh, I just work.
Work. Workaholic. That sounds
I work
right.
at home, No, I love my children. I love family time. But you also need time away from that. You need your own time. And I'm an avid fisherman. I love fly fishing, and there's nothing like catching a 20-pound steelhead or lake trout on a fly rod on a tiny little bug, and doing it under the Niagara Falls, in the Niagara Falls Gorge. Yeah, the nature. I was a naturalist back at the Science Museum, so nature is in my blood. Fishing is kind of my getaway from everything. No technology, just go in the gorge. Nobody can text me, call me. I'm free for a few hours.
That's awesome. And as far I know, fly fishing requires skills. It's not just something that amateurs can really do.
I'm learning more and more every day.
That is funny. This weekend, I took my daughters 4 and my son 2, took them fishing, and I'm not an avid fisherman. I maybe fish once a year, and it showed. We didn't catch anything. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I enjoy it just because
I'll give you some tips.
Yeah, I'll definitely get some tips for you. How long have you been at Deweyville University?
Yeah, so I started Deweyville April of 2019. I have a friend, fellow fisherman that I actually knew for about 20 years. He tried to get me in here for 4 or 5 years prior to 2019, and I was at Hospice Buffalo. I enjoyed my work. I was leading technology there, working with patients. It was a very gratifying job, but along came, changes to administration and leadership. And finally, one day I was opening up a new site, and I'm up in the ceiling in a suit, pulling,
Mhm.
network cables, and I get a call from the president of the university, and she asked me, I want to talk to you. So looked up there. I'm like, what am I doing in the ceiling? I'm done with those days.
Yeah.
So I agreed to have a conversation with her, went to lunch with her, and a month later, I was moving over to higher education. Yeah.
Awesome. Good stuff. I know you all recently opened up a esports center. Congratulations on that. Can you tell us
Yeah,
more about
that's
the role that IT played in that development?
well, I never thought in a million years that I would be opening up an esports arena at a university. Honestly, 5 years ago, really didn't do much with gaming. I played Madden on my Xbox with my daughter and my son. But one day I turned on the TV and ESPN was on, and they have this huge stage, lights and computers. I'm like, oh, that looks interesting. And it was the esports tournament. So
Ah,
it was a funny story is the director of campus planning, who designs spaces here at the campus, called me one afternoon and said, hey, I've got this space. It's 35 by 35. Do you want it? And I
mhm.
said, well, what am I going to do in there? It was in the athletic building, kind of away from everybody. So I remember some of my employees at a meeting talking about esports, and I said, let's go to lunch. So I took the director to lunch, and
Mhm.
I said, let's sit down, let's plan something. So we grabbed a napkin, and he goes, well, let's just pull out your phone and we'll bring up some other universities and see what they're doing. And I said, nah, I said, let's just design something. I know you need, 10 spaces, you need, but let's be different. Let's get ready for the future. So we built a 10 station desk with playing machines. And then I said, this is kind of dull, it's boring. Let's put in a championship zone. So we have
Ooh.
yeah. So I'm like, the 10 players, top 3 players, we put a couch in there, we put a big screen 4K projector, and that would be the top 3. We'll sit there with, the chairs vibrating, leather, lazy boys, and let them play the championship in this big space,
Right.
still within the arena. Well, to find out gamers really don't like playing on any monitors or displays larger than 24 inches. They're used to the pixels. It messes with their
Ah.
so so
Very
um
particular.
so that we adjusted a little bit, and then a little bit longer into the conversation, I said, you know what? I never played with VR. Let's put a VR. We had a VR system. I said, let's put this space over in the corner. This will be our VR station, and we could do VR gaming just for fun. So when we open up the sports arena, students can just come in. They don't have to be, gamers. They can come in and check out new technology and new games. So it
Okay.
kind of started out with those 3 sections, and it grew to, we're in 2 different divisions, the ECC and the newer division. We just became members of it, so I don't know exactly what that is. I have a manager here who is the coach. He's a
Okay.
full-time employee of mine, and then he's a part-time coach. He does
Wow.
all the recruiting. But this all happened around COVID as well. So a lot of our recruitment and everything was remote, and our gaming was remote. The space never really got utilized, and we
Okay.
never really were able to have that true opening. So just recently, about a month and a half ago, we had our grand opening. Our main sponsor, Spectrum Enterprise, who sponsors the esports arena, they did the ribbon cutting with the president. We had
Wow.
about 40 individuals, government, the news.
Yeah, but I
Um,
saw you on the news.
Oh, didn't it
Yeah.
just it has blown up, and I'm getting calls every day like, can you help us? Like, we saw you guys on the news. Help us. We want to do this, not just from higher ed, but K through 12 as well.
Yeah.
So it's really bloomed. And I think having that grand opening really put the focus on what we've done. And if you've seen the place, we designed a computer chip in the middle that was going to be our symbol for the room, not
Mhm.
knowing that this designer built, it looks like an octopus in the center, LED lighting with arms coming down all 4 walls. It's just really a cool space to walk into, and it's open from 10 to 10 for everyone, all the students, faculty, and staff.
Yeah, I'm jealous that my college didn't have an esports arena.
Come here and play in ours.
Yeah, definitely.
You'll pass as a student.
Barely. But yeah, I really love that story. And it goes to show like how you and your team were so future focused and also working with the gamers to say, okay, what do you want? What screens are you used to playing on? What technology do you need? All that factors into so many other IT and cybersecurity related projects. But as you mentioned, other schools are reaching out to you and also other organizations asking how can they duplicate what you all have done at Duville. As far as from a cybersecurity standpoint or in IT technology, like what were some considerations at a high level that someone who wants to do it should consider?
I would say be ready for it, have those conversations. But one thing you really want, we have the esports program and the arena. We don't have the curriculum to go with that. So recruiting is restricted. So we have a entry-level technology class. We're currently building on that to create the curriculum where we can start having better recruiting efforts. So I would say, segregate your network. Esports is a lot cloud, and everybody and their brother are coming in, and segregate that network would help secure your data because you're logging in with your credentials. The students are going in there, logging with their credentials, maybe doing some work on one of the machines. So we take that very seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know as CIO, obviously you have to be on top of the emerging technology. However, I know that cybersecurity is central to everything that you do and your decisions. So can you tell us what differences does higher ed have in terms of cybersecurity challenges than your typical business or nonprofit organization? Because a lot of members of our audience, they have to comply with so many different cybersecurity requirements. But in higher education, I know y'all face some unique challenges. So can you talk to some of those unique challenges?
Yeah, we do. We have a lot of student data. We have, and with our university, we are a private university, profit at that. We have a chiropractic and pharmacy department. So there's HIPAA there. I follow the NIST framework. That incorporates the GLBA framework as well, which is a higher ed. FERPA is huge. Financial data, student data, records, grades. The amount of data in higher education, I was never aware, like their financial data, like you pretty much keep that indefinitely. And that kind of pushed us to do some internal pivoting in regards to backup and security. So in a private sector, when I was in the private sector, you followed the framework. It was one piece of framework. Higher ed, you have multiple levels of compliance. Yeah, and you have to have that balance because with the students, really, their data is impacted. And if that gets out, you're in a lot of trouble, but also
it'll be a bad day.
Yeah. and as you see nowadays, I mean, the DNA company just got millions of users' data.
23andMe.
Yeah, 23andMe. I mean, they're higher education, the problem is people try to hide it. And when you hide it, that's when you start getting in trouble. That's when the compliance comes to play, So if you had those compliance background and initiatives put in place, if something does happen, you will have that in place. And it's really helpful to have that for sure.
Definitely. So I know that academic institutions value freedom and collaboration. How can CIOs kind of balance that culture with good cybersecurity posture?
You want to secure your data. Your population doesn't always understand. They're here, the students are here to learn. Faculty have their ways, their methods of teaching, whether it's their own devices, our devices. We try to balance that out and put as much compliance in the foreground. Policies, we really set standards here, what type of equipment you're allowed to use. We don't want to restrict their accessibility and their methods. Some use YouTube, some use a thumb drive. So we have to secure those endpoints, but you don't want to hold up their teaching. You want them to be able to come in, get started, get that student going on their day, and not be stressed by technology not working. So
Right.
we have a strict set of standards. Our policies are out there for every individual has to read them and sign off on them. Trying to push that cybersecurity, email scanning, that takes a few minutes, and we like to be transparent. We don't hide that, we want individuals to know that their data is secure.
Right.
But you've got to follow the university's policy, stay compliant, stay secure. And it's not just our data, it's their intellectual property as well.
Right.
So that's the other piece of the puzzle. They don't like anybody taking their property and trying to
Understandable.
secure that property and tell them, hey, we're going to back that up, or we're going to have this for you if something happens. It's a hard sell. So you really have to focus on communicating your policies and your procedures, and just make them trust you that you're going to do everything possible to navigate that security and that teaching method.
Wow, I think that's great. And you mentioned about the importance of transparency, and I was going to mention how that's certainly tied directly into trust. Like, you have to be transparent, you have to understand, all right, these are our requirements, these are policies, procedures, but ensuring that the technology is not, or the cybersecurity compliance requirements are not impeding on them performing their duties, their jobs. Yeah,
Absolutely.
What are some ways that you've seen has helped build that trust from a practical standpoint when you're working with, I know because you have so many different stakeholders, staff, students, faculty.
Well, it was pretty easy for me because in one of the conversations I had with the president during my pre-interview, during lunch with her, is I was at that point transparent with her. I'm never going to lie to you. If there was a problem, you're going to know about it. I'm not going to hide things from you, and I'm not going to hide things from the community. So that trust right off the bat is getting the president at that level to trust you. So if something does come up and I need to address something with faculty, let's say, I have the trust of the president, and I can use that as a kind of a filter for me to say, hey, the president's doing this. No reason why you can't do it. We have an IT LMS system where we do cybersecurity training. We have quizzes constantly. People can enroll in them. They have to. It's mandatory. In order for you to be put in for an increase in salary, you have to have the annual mandatory quizzes and everything done. And they love it. And the president takes those herself. So it's just buy-in. It's buy-in. It's communication.
Certainly. And it's so critical to have that senior leadership's buy-in from the president all the way down. That is, you're fortunate to have that.
when I came here in 2019, they had no cybersecurity presence. They had no backup. They had tape backups that weren't running. Nobody was verifying that data. So that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to take on this position. I knew it was going to be a challenge, but I couldn't see an institution like this not having this technology. And I knew there was room for growth. And right off the bat, having the president backing me, I report directly to our president, it's just everything, because, she gets it. And she wants her students, her faculty to be safe and secure. I mean, we started our cybersecurity initiative 3 years ago, roughly. After I got the backup in place. That was the most important thing at the time, because there was nothing. And at that time, it was just cybersecurity was just like really hidden. It was really coming to market, to tell you the honest truth. People really started talking about it, especially in higher education. It's over the last few years, the education institutes that you see getting hammered are by cyber threats and bad actors. It's out of control.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of work to do. So we're still in the middle of it. We've been doing it for 3 years. It's expensive, but I told the president, this is what you're facing. If you want to take this risk, this is the possible outcomes. And she got it. So she's supportive of it.
And you mentioned something also earlier when we were talking about cybersecurity compliance. A lot of times, organizations that are experiencing or have experienced a data breach, they get in trouble because they're trying to hide it or cover up what happened. And to your point, at the end of the day, no organization is 100% secure. Every organization experiences some type of cyber incidents, whether it's Department of Defense, large organization, it doesn't matter. But the thing is having a plan in place, knowing how to respond, and then also, being transparent with the stakeholders and not trying to hide it.
Yeah, well, that's where incident response comes into play as well. I mean, the smallest thing. I mean, I report to the president if I see we're getting attacks, we get attacked. I mean, everybody gets attacks. It's just how you document that and how you track it. Russia, China, that we get a lot of attacks. We also have students in those territories. So, we have to be
from all directions.
you have to be very careful on the data that you exclude, and you have to protect that stuff coming in. And incident response. We don't have small colleges, at least Duville, we could not afford to have a CISO on board, a whole security team. So what I did, and I'm not a security expert, I've been on some cybersecurity teams where we, did some training and stuff like that, but by no means am I a certified cybersecurity professional. I pay attention, and I did a lot of research and training, and it scares me. It scares me to death that, something this bad somebody really could get in and get our data. And, you see these breaches every day. But disaster recovery, if you have a good disaster recovery plan, including the incident response, I have a team. I have a local, he's actually a friend of mine. I met him at a local conference, cybersecurity conference, where he was one of the speakers. Dullest person in the world, but the data was right on target, and he's literally on the corner of our college here. So I, right off the bat, engaged with him, and we built, with my network administrator, we sat down, we built our strategic plan around cyber, and an incident response was key. We use a remote SOC, a third-party SOC. They're constantly 24/7 monitoring our ports, being proactive, communicating, reporting everything you would get in a SOC. And we went through, we got tagged with black bite a year ago or so, but we caught it right away. So what actually happened with us is we actually caught it. I get the phone call from my network administrator saying, hey, something weird's going on with this user account. And after 5 minutes of discussion, I said, go down and unplug the network, get off, just unplug the internet. And we did find that, somebody did infiltrate our system, and they were able to see a directory, but could not prove that they actually received any of our data. We took that as a threat, an active cyber attack. We notified the states that were involved. I went to the president. I said, we stopped it, but we've got to do some cleanup, because you've got 25 years of data on these servers, and old servers that are outdated, they're not patched. I said, this is the time we really need to focus on building our infrastructure. And we were already in the midst of doing that. So it wasn't a hard test. We shut down for 2 days, and took systems offline, did a lot of scanning with our SOC. And the other thing is very important with incident response is having a privacy lawyer. They're the ones who do this every day. They know how to communicate. So when I say communication, it's, if you don't communicate, to your point, if you're legally bound to report a threat, and you don't, you are looking at lawsuits, not just fines from the government, but you're looking at lawsuits from students, faculty, and it's not good for the reputation of the school, for sure.
Certainly. And what we saw with the former Uber CISO, he was charged criminally and convicted, but fortunately he had to go to prison, I guess.
That's why I don't want to be in that position. I'll outsource this.
Absolutely. But what I think you said is vital, when it ties back into the culture and having the buy-in and trust of the president, is how you're able to make that split decision, where in that situation it's so important to make that split decision. All right, we're going to disconnect our network connectivity. I'm sure that wasn't an easy decision to make, though. So I guess, can you talk to us more about the emotions you're experiencing, where you're second guessing yourself? We know now in hindsight that was the right decision to make, but it's not easy. So can you talk more about that?
Yeah, definitely. It was one of the scariest moments of my life because, there's local schools here, universities, high profile universities in Buffalo that got hit hard. And they weren't ready for it. And they got fined, they paid ransoms. I mean, and they still weren't secure. To this day, that was 3.5 years ago. To this day, they're still having issues with their data. So that decision walking in, I was actually off. It was the middle of a blizzard, to tell you the honest truth. In Buffalo, New York, I think we got 8 feet that evening. And I drove in a driving ban, and she was in the office with her chief of staff. And I said, I gotta talk to you. And she's like, well, let's talk. I said, no, I gotta come in and I gotta talk to you face to face. She thought I was quitting.
Like, don't leave us.
So I said, well, I might after this. So I told her what happened. I told her, what the effect was and kind of what we've done. And to this day, she's like, I couldn't imagine what would have happened if you weren't prepared and you didn't do what you did. Coming to me to tell me you needed to close the college for 2 days, which we would have been remote anyway, so it wasn't a big deal. We're fully remote. We're not a fully remote school, but we're fully capable of remote learning. And this is something that my standards that I did for all my lecture halls, classrooms, and labs. We were fully capable of going remote on a split of, So when COVID hit, we had no issue going remote. We were fully functioning the same day. Within an hour, we sent out a message, go home, you're in remote protocol.
That's impressive.
Yeah,
plan in place and infrastructure.
And it's not me, it's my team. I have a very good team. Their dedication to the school is unbelievable. But if I didn't have the team and their support as well, I almost didn't want to go to the president. I was like calling her, I'm like, I quit. I've never dealt with this before. I don't know what to do. But I put my big boy pants on and said, what am I going to do? I called my local the individual cybersecurity partner, and I said, he was responsive. I said, this is what's going on. And he goes, okay, go unplug the network. I said, done. Get off the internet. Done. He goes, all right, let's call our SOC, get them on the line. They were already investigating. They were already on it. Privacy lawyer, got him involved right away. But the communication was really key. And that was one of the struggles that we had. I didn't have that ability to go out and send out a mass communication saying, hey, this is what happened. Leadership wanted to wait. They wanted to kind of keep it low profile. And I understand why, but it probably wasn't communicated properly. But this is the first time for all of us going through something like this. And the last thing you want to do is over-exaggerate an issue. And I may have over-exaggerated the issue by reporting it right away. But, I didn't want to take that risk. We knew they at some point, and they got in from a service account where the old admin set up a service account with welcome and password as the username and password. And that was on our system for over 20 years. And to find out, we had over 2,000 service accounts that were active. So that was one of the things that we did. We investigated every server, every process, any access to our servers via VPN or remote desktop or whatever the method was. We shut that down, we disabled. And then as we brought things back online, we found processes were broken. And that's when we would say, okay, it needs the username and password. Let's create the secure user and password and follow the policy. So now we're pretty much hopefully safe. So I feel pretty confident saying that, but it was definitely a learning exercise. And I'm new to higher ed. I didn't know all the compliance for higher ed, so it's been an eye opener. That compliance helped me build our disaster recovery platform, basically. Like I said, we follow NIST, so NIST is pretty much the king of the crop. So that's what we follow. So.
Yeah, it's like the old saying goes, don't let a good crisis go to waste. And essentially, you all,
That,
took that hit and bounced back, and now I'm sure you can proudly say and confidently say that your cybersecurity posture is a lot stronger as a result. So that's really
absolutely.
important. And I really want to applaud you as a leader, because what we talked about earlier, so many IT leaders want to hide it or be ashamed, but everyone's going to experience a cyber incident at some point. It's inevitable. So for you to be able to share that, your lessons learned, that can help other IT leaders to hopefully be better prepared and learn lessons learned. That's what it comes down to.
Absolutely.
But, yeah.
Yeah, and this all goes back to your reputation. Like our school, like we're a small school, under 4,000 students. We rely heavily on our enrollment, and if we see it with the other university I was talking about earlier. Like I have no family members that said I'm not going there. They're not secure, and
Right.
that reputation that can damage you and damage the university and possibly shut down a university. So depending on the type of threat, yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's so important for, regardless what organization you're in, understanding that cybersecurity has a direct parallel to the reputation. And I think it was Jeff Bezos who said, like, if your customers don't trust you with their data, that you're going to secure it, your organization's toast.
Yes,
In this
absolutely.
day and age,
Well,
data is everything. It's king.
and what that also does is that it tells them that they have to find other means of using their data outside of your infrastructure. And a lot of people don't really think about that. If you have that policy and that you set those standards, and you're really communicating those standards and showing them, it's not just like IT having a security posture, it's the university. It's not just IT. It's
Right.
every, like, awareness. I started our awareness program the second I walked in this place because I saw the old systems, I saw the failed processes. I knew they didn't have the team in place, the IT team, to kind of run with this like backup in cyber. So in my old job at hospice, that was what I did. I went out, I worked with companies, I put up digital signage, I brought in copiers with digital signage on the keypads, and I constantly, my printers here, they all have signage on them, and you walk up there, it's like, did you change your password, or are you using a say? So it's all about awareness, because if the end users aren't trained properly and aware of potential threats.
Right.
I mean, when I started here, I had the CFO calling me from Walmart saying, hey, I didn't even start yet. He had my cell phone and he's calling me at my job, and he's like, I'm at Walmart. Where do I find Amazon gift cards? I'm like, why are you doing that? And he's like, I got an email from the president saying she wants $10,000 worth of Amazon cards. I said, well, they're a competitor. Well, back then, I said, you're not going to find them there. Get in your car and go home. Well, I already bought $10,000 worth of whatever. And I'm like, right there, he came in, I pulled a meeting in with his whole group, and I said, if you guys ever get a request for anything like that via email, get up, go talk to the individual. Nobody who wants $10,000 or $20,000 worth of gift cards are going to shoot you an email saying, hey, go buy me $10,000 worth of cards. So and that goes with the training too, going out, and I communicate. I know we talked a little bit about, the collaboration between departments. We include them in everything. We get up, we walk to them, we do hands-on training, we do assessments, we do, attack simulations, and in the near future, January, we're having a huge tabletop event, thanks to you, and NicerNet, and that is gaining ground already. People are hearing about it, and we didn't even advertise it yet.
I'm really excited about that event. Y'all doing just a staff-wide tabletop exercise. That's major, and that really goes back, tying into the culture from the top down, where you all have a strong cybersecurity posture, and you understand the importance of every single user is on the front lines of those phishing attacks and so forth. So you have to make the investments to train them properly.
Yeah, it'll also showcase, what departments go through. It's not just IT, it's HR, it's finance, and faculty, they're concentrating and trained. They don't know everything that's going on, but if they're included in these tabletop exercises, they're going to be more aware. They're going to be trained. They're going to get on board really quick when they find out that, hey, if we get attacked, it's your data too.
Right.
So it's I can't wait for the January to come around and have you guys on campus to do that tabletop exercise.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome, and certainly going to be a model for other universities that they can follow to help train their faculty, staff, and students. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
This has been a great conversation, Joseph. If we get ready to kind of wrap it up, one question I definitely want to make sure I ask you before I let you go. You talked about your experience starting off in just manual labor as a bricklayer. That I can imagine how intensive that is. I have a bad back, so my back hurts just thinking of
Me too.
laying
Three back spine surgeries.
Ouch. But but it's really inspiring to see how your career has progressed and just how you become such a remarkable leader. And like you say, you have a great team. You don't do it alone, and you focus on the priorities. You have you follow the NIST framework. I always emphasize how important that is to have some type of framework you're following, and then just following on the basics, like in football, the blocking and tackling. Get that right, because what you mentioned with service accounts, I'm sure there are going to be IT leaders listening to this podcast like, oh man, we haven't checked our service account.
So better check those.
Lessons learned. Based on all the lessons you've learned throughout your career, what's one lesson you'd come to mind that you wish you would have knew earlier on in your career?
Oh gosh. I would say your team is your core. Building a team, don't do it yourself. I was always, my work ethic is I'm a dedicated, hardworking individual, and my first real job in technology was with a large company where I was doing technology on my own. So I had to really depend on partnerships, consultants. That's really how I learned and grew. To this day, I do depend on my team a lot, but there's times where something's not getting done, like pulling cable out of a room. I'll take off my coat and I'll go and I'll get on the floor and I'll pull cable. So don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. I kind of got a little confused when it came to when I should offload certain work. And you can't do it alone. So I think having those partners, the team, having a great team. I have an excellent team. I can't say I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the team that I have. I built this department from scratch. We consolidated everything in the university from hardware to software, saving millions of dollars. And that's not just me. That's, my team. I put that responsibility in their hands. And I guess the biggest thing that I wish I knew earlier is that I can depend on my people. I can depend on outside people. And these days you have to, because what CIO can sit back and just think about compliance all day or, security, it's almost impossible. And in an institution like mine, where we don't have the budget for a large security team, you need to learn to depend and trust your partners. And I think that is something that I learn more and more about every day. Depend on people like you.
I appreciate it. Yeah, certainly it takes a collaborative effort, and any leader that's been in leadership more than a day realizes that and understands the importance of their team. And it's like the saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, you go with a team. You need people. And to your point, no one is going to be an expert in all of these different areas, cybersecurity, compliance, privacy. It's impossible to have all of the levels of expertise. But as a CIO, you're going to identify those partners you need to improve the cybersecurity posture at DeVille. So I think you're doing a phenomenal job at that. And I really appreciate your time today on the CMMC Proof Podcast. We got to have you back again. But
Part 2 coming soon.
Absolutely.